Hello YouTube and welcome to the premiere episode of Season 7 of Tomorrow's Talk Today. I'm your host Jenna Latham and today I'm joined by panelists Tori Booth, Kendall Clapham, and Ahmed Abdallah. On today's episode, we'll be discussing masculinity in the media, particularly what does it mean to be a man, the idea of manhood, and masculinity has changed throughout the decades. And our guests today have watched and analyzed a plethora of videos on the topic, including TED Talks, Vice debates, and interviews. To begin our discussion, let's take a quick look at a clip from a TED Talk titled, How Movies Teach Manhood.
And I asked my daughter who her favorite character was in Star Wars. You know what she said? Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Glinda. Now, what do these two have in common? Maybe it's not just the sparkly dress. I think these people are experts. I think these are the two people in the movie who know more than anybody else, and they love sharing their knowledge with other people to help them reach their potential. Now, they're leaders. I like that kind of quest for my daughter, and I like that kind of quest for my son. I want more quests like that. I want fewer quests where my son is told, go out and fight it alone, and more quests where he sees that it's his job to join a team. Maybe a team led by women to help other people become better and be better people, like the Wizard of Oz. Thank you.
Well, as you can see from that clip, movies in today's world are teaching boys the wrong thing, and that they should be teaching them something different. Tori, why don't you give us your thoughts on the media's effect on the views of masculinity?
Yeah, so what I believe is that I think that the media mainly portrays men as the big and strong saviors per se. So as he was talking about in the TED Talk, it's you see these characters that are Superman and Batman that are these men trying to save either particularly women or just people that they view or portray as weak. And I think that sets the tone more so for media, and if children are watching that, that's what they're going to absorb and think of, which was what that guy was trying to say in his TED Talk, and how that there are now newer alternatives where there are leading women roles where women can be as strong as men.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because in the media right now, in movies and everything, you see a lot of people portraying the hyper-masculinity and just I feel it's giving children these days more of the perception that that's how they're supposed to act, and I just don't believe that's the correct way of doing that.
Yeah, so I think that in the media, a lot of times we see men in movies always fighting and conquering stuff. So I think if we try to incorporate ideas like he talked about in the TED Talk from The Wizard of Oz, how Dorothy was kind and a good leader, I think that's what we should be teaching the young boys today.
Yeah, I agree with that. Shying away from these unrealistic expectations that the man is always the one that should be the leader and take charge, and it should be more of a equal representation from both men and women in a lot more children's movies.
Have any of you seen any movies in particular that, other than The Wizard of Oz, that have been showing this more?
Frozen is a big one. I feel that was a really popular movie. The main character was a woman, and she was the leader of she revolted against her family and everything, and she found her way, but she also had a sister that also followed in her footsteps. So it was a good representation from the female's perspective, I think.
And what about the male perspective?
I would say that the men, in movies that I've seen that women are more empowered, is that the men are more of a supporting role. They are there in case she needs them. It's not, whereas they're just the main focus of everything.
Yeah, and actually remembering now in Frozen, one of the guy characters was her husband throughout most of the movie, but then at the end he turned evil and tried to go against her. So it kind of went against traditional, like usually the evil witch is played by a woman, or like the evil character is usually played sometimes.
So what types of movies, like plots, would you want to see more of?
I want to see more of, like, specifically just women movies that, like, don't have anything to do with men. Because most of the time, movies that involve women are focused, like, are centered around a man. Like, they have female main characters, but it's like they're fighting over this one man, or they only talk about, like, guys, which I don't think it should be that way anymore.
I agree. Thank you all for bringing up some very good points about the media's effect on the views of masculinity. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back, so stay tuned.
The Communication Studies Department is actually one of the youngest and one of the largest in the Coco College of Arts and Sciences here at Longwood University. We have 2 concentrations, one in digital media and public relations, and students get hands-on skill in those classes. We're going to teach you all kinds of things on the digital media side. You're going to get editing, videography, storytelling work, and on the PR side, hands-on as well, doing client-based work and learning a lot about corporate communication. And of course, our alumni run out in the world and do all kinds of stuff with that degree.
The public relations concentration in the communication studies major really focuses on research methods, and it focuses on working for a diverse organization, and whether that's copy for their websites or working with the different publics that they serve that buy their products or that read pamphlets and materials from that organization. And that's through courses like communication studies research and public relations research and social media campaigns.
The advice I would give to anybody who is interested in joining communication studies is to don't be afraid to reach out to your professors, to the other students in your class, because we really care about each other and everybody is challenged at some point or another. I mean, that is what we do here, is challenge you so that you can become your best. And so when you get to that point that you need help, reach out and ask for it and you will find it.
The advice that I would give to a freshman that's coming into the major is definitely to get involved as soon as possible. If you're wanting to do an internship and you have something that you're interested in, freshman or sophomore year, you should definitely do that because you'll have more on your resume when you're a senior and applying for jobs out of school. And then you'll also just be able to figure out earlier what you like and what you don't like.
The advice I'd like to give students who want to become a comm student plus a PR track is learn to adapt. Come in with lots of ideas, but also practice your writing and your creativity at the same time too.
The digital media concentration really focuses on telling stories. We have a strong journalistic background, so we are training some future journalists, but we're also training content creators, editors, videographers. Really, we want to be technically competent at telling stories, but also understand the theory that goes behind telling those stories and how those stories can affect people's perceptions and understandings of communication. The studio here is almost a $2 million facility that has 3 cameras that allows us to both record or live stream out. We use it for a lot of different purposes here. We do some live senior streaming research, which to my understanding is we are the only department in the US that has live undergraduate streaming research. We also use it to produce some talk shows as well as creative projects.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Comcast.
And student organizations come in here too, as well as individual students to take advantage of the green screen, the lights, the camera setup, the audio board, and all the other facets of the studio.
With a lot of freshmen, you might feel a little out of place when you first come into the digital editing, especially if you haven't done any editing, camera work. It's kind of a lot, but you shouldn't be worried. Everyone else around you has the same experience as you, and we're all brand new to this, and all the professors will help you with anything you need. There's no such thing as a dumb question.
The advice I would give people wanting to add digital media to concentration here is to be prepared to be challenged. A lot of people may come over to comm studies and think, oh, this is an easy major, I just have to talk about it. But I think as any of our students can tell you, this is difficult, this is challenging. We're gonna push you. We're gonna expect the best out of you. But if you rise to the challenge, you will come out of here prepared to take on the world, and you will be successful, I can guarantee that.
Welcome back. Next, we're going to be focusing on the difference of what manhood and masculinity used to mean and what it means now. So let's go to Ahmed, who watched a Vice debate for his thoughts on how this has changed.
Yeah, so I think growing up, manhood and masculinity wasn't really talked about enough in my house. And I think I got the idea of manhood and masculinity from the media I consumed, which basically portrayed things of strength and like dominance. And now that I've learned and grown up, I've realized that qualities like emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and just being able to express yourself also tie into masculinity.
Yeah. Thank you, Ahmed. I believe we actually have a clip from that debate, so let's take a quick look.
There's a lot of talk, of writing, of research these days that says there's a crisis in masculinity. Is there a crisis in masculinity? And if so, like, what is that crisis?
The thing that I see is a lot of deconstructing generational trauma. The be a man, boys don't cry, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why we see it as a crisis, because we're actually trying to redefine what it means to be a man, and none of us have any idea because we're just out here trying to be whoever we are.
That's right. I think that historically, being a man was rooted in patriarchy and misogyny. And now we realize how harmful that has been over the years. And so we don't really know how to define where we're supposed to be.
So Kendall, what do you think about that video?
They talked about it a little bit, but I think the big thing I took away was that we like to be put in predictable places, especially a lot of men. They use that as a way to make an excuse for some of their behaviors. So being predictable when it comes to treating a woman a certain way or treating certain family members certain ways is like, it's been accustomed to the way that they are almost brought up and just bred to be. But I think the main distinction between the two is like them trying to find their most vulnerable side. So finding that balance between being vulnerable and finding your like safe space, I think, is a big thing that I took away from that clip.
Yeah, I also think that like for me personally, when I grew up, like it was always kind of an equal distribution like between both of my parents, like doing like work and such like that, and I was able to either dress up like as a Disney princess or as like Superman if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. But I think it really does have a lot to do with your upbringing and what you see when you're growing up from your parents or siblings, older siblings, grandparents, like any kind of family member, or even media. Like if they watch a specific movie that's like more violent towards women, like a man being more violent towards women, that's going to ingrain in that child's head and show them like, oh, this is what this needs to be from now on. So I think it's really important from like at a younger age for them to kind of instill like, hey, like women can also do this too. Like women are also powerful.
So there's a topic of toxic masculinity that's always brought up in the media today, and it wasn't really talked about earlier on in like the generation. So what do you guys think about toxic masculinity, and like where did you learn about it the first time?
I think that I learned about it probably through middle school and like progressing up high school and then college. I think it looks different with all ages, but for a lot of boys, it starts off slow with like calling girls names and like just joking them around. I mean, they think it's not hurtful, but sometimes it can be, and then it just grows into other things. But I think it comes back to that like not being aware that what you're doing like sometimes can be hurtful, and not just like, and I think that goes like along being toxic. You don't know you're doing it, so you just like continue to do it. So it's just like a never-ending cycle, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I feel like toxic masculinity now is way more, not glamorized, but it's way more talked about in the way that it's probably not the best way to talk about it, because it's, I don't know, it's just like a lot of toxic just actions and words that just don't have any consequences at this point, I feel like. And, you know, anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, I think that probably the best example of toxic masculinity is Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. So he pretty much embodies toxic masculinity. He's vain, manipulates women, he only really cares about himself. Also, he always wants to one-up his peers, so I think that is what toxic masculinity is.
And what about Andrew Tate? Tori, I know you have a lot to say about him.
So one of the videos that I had to watch was about Andrew Tate, which is, he's like a former wrestler turned, I don't even know what he's turned into, but he's very much like, he considers himself as like an alpha male, and like he is able to like dominate people based on how he thinks. And that's like, I think those people in the media is like, it's becoming very harmful for people to consume that, which hence why, I mean, Andrew Tate was banned from like all social media platforms because of that.
Yeah. Thank you, and I think we can all agree that there's a lot to consider here. Don't tune out just yet. We'll be right back to discuss what does being a man to each of our guests here on tomorrow's Talk Today.
The motto of the department for years has been, we make the world through words.
All the professors are very supportive. I know that I can go with them with any questions about anything.
They're amazing, and they're genius, and you would be amazed at the things that they've done, and the places they've been, and the things that they know.
You gain really neat skills that can take you in a whole range of directions, and it really allows you to have a wide array of possibilities when you leave Longwood. Teachers are very creative in how they teach, and we try to teach creative approaches to problem solving. So in our writing classes, often you will do things like build Legos and then have to describe how you did it so that you learn how to write instructions that other people can read. We talk about great ideas, and so classes are just really fun to sit around and talk about the meaning of life and talk about what's super important in the world today.
There is a level of being able to sit down and just listen that is required to be able to do that work well. And with that, listening means being sensitive to people's backgrounds. We make the world through words, through those sensitivities, and coming together as an English community.
You learn how to put your best effort into something to get the best back from it. I started out wanting to write books, and now I'm working with the athletics department, working with ESPN.
I had dropped out for financial reasons, and while I was sitting at home just working, trying to make some money, I got an email from an English professor, Dr. Hetty. It was a deeply personal moment, but it really did feel like the English department cared about me and about the students.
With us. To end our discussion today, let's take a look at a clip titled, "What is Masculinity?"
What is masculinity? People seem to know it when they see it. They sense it. They react to it. They evaluate it. But if you ask most men to define masculinity, you get a lot of confused and conflicting answers. In many cases, you'll get a lecture about morality, about what a real man should do, about what he shouldn't do, about what he should wear, how he should behave. The answers and the rules, they change from social class to social class and from culture to culture. So much so, in fact, that many people believe masculinity doesn't mean anything at all, that it's just a social construct. And to support their point, they tend to study and write about different groups of men and their different ideas about masculinity.
I see a lot's happening here, but do you all think being a man is, what do you think being a man is, Kendall? We can start with your thoughts.
I think it's like finding your balance of the physical, emotional, and mental well-being that comes with being vulnerable, like I talked about earlier. I think a lot of guys today nowadays struggle because they don't have an outlet specifically like with their friends. Like they don't feel like they have a lot of people they can go to. So that vulnerability starts in with repression.
Yeah.
So they hold in their emotions, they hold in like what they want to truly say to people because they're afraid that it'll like make them look less masculine and less like approachable to women, which is like a big thing. And I feel like finding that vulnerability is like a really important thing that needs to start happening.
Yeah. I feel the same way because I feel like more people are like thinking that being a man is just your gender. And I feel like that's definitely not the case because gender in general is a social construct and we made it as a society. So I feel like we have the power to change that and change the way that people think of that and just change the social construct, you know? Tori, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, so from one of the videos that we watched about like art history and men throughout history explained that sex is like your biological sex. There are female, male, and intersex, and gender is a social construct. So back in like the 18th century, being a man in specifically like France meant wearing high heels, wearing like a wig, like very feminine, more so feminine, like I guess ways to express themselves. And then now our culture has kind of shifted from like the 20th to the 21st century where like a man needs to be buff and goes to the gym every day, like dominant and wears like manly stuff, like not high heels. But all of that is a social construction of what society thinks a man should be and what needs to be.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about the term of BDE or big dick energy? You guys have any thoughts on that?
I think it's also a social construct.
Yeah.
I mean, putting an actual like title on a group of people, especially like a group of men, like I said earlier, it gives them an excuse for their actions. It's basically just saying, if we act this way, it's because we have big dick energy. And it's like, the more we allow that kind of like repression of emotion because they don't feel like they can be vulnerable or like not, if they're not showing big dick energy, then they're weak or they're not masculine. So it's like putting a label on it does not help that like progression of like breaking gendered stereotypes, I feel like.
Yeah. Ahmed, how do you feel about this being the only man on this stage right now?
About BDE?
Yeah.
So I think I haven't seen many guys use that term like on themselves. It's usually been, I guess, sort of a compliment from women, but at the same time, that sort of compliment can go to your head and then you'll end up becoming like toxic.
Yeah.
So I agree with some of the points that Kendall was making, but also probably shouldn't keep using the term BDE.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's more like it gives someone a power trip when that's like the compliment used. And for me, there's a very distinct line between like confidence and cocky. And I feel like people using the term BDE is more, it's like specifically if they're using it to describe themselves, like that is a very cocky thing to say. And it's almost like them acting like that gives them a reason to treat people the way that they do if they believe that they're like better or higher or like more, I guess, in Andrew Tate words, alpha male. So to me, I think BDE is just kind of like a excuse way to treat people shitty.
Yeah. So I feel like, in my personal opinion, I feel like being a man doesn't necessarily mean what it means to a lot of people, because in the media especially, like you see a lot of, oh, what does this mean to be a man? Does this mean? So I feel like it, personally for me, I feel like being a man is just being able to know just your emotions and just like know how you're affecting other people and just like the ways you're going about it, and just being able to know that you're being just a decent person. That's, at the end of the day, being a man is a decent person. So yeah, I'd like to thank all of you for joining me. This has been quite the discussion, but that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank the panelists for their opinions and everyone behind the scenes for making this program possible. Be sure to subscribe to the Longwood COMM Studies on YouTube and get notifications when the next episode is streaming. I'm your host, Jenna, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Tomorrow's Talk Today.